The night wind carries the smell of blood. The sound of hissing breath, intermittent, choked, as if he were holding a scream that could not be released, crept slowly among the tall weeds that swayed gently as if he were watching silently. The trampled tracks were still warm, the ground gaping like skin torn by sharp nails. A huge shadow slipped between the bushes. The movements were silent, and yet those eyes barked with madness and long-held anger. The claws were still shaking, although the body underneath was already lifeless. He looked up, sniffed the air as if looking for an answer, then sighed a heavy sigh that sounded like a growl from the chest that was never peaceful. The sound of his own heartbeat echoed in the head, beating the sounds of the night. The lion is not just thirsty. He was angry. His name was an unspoken voice in this silent kingdom, a figure that could not be challenged, could not be refuted. But behind his cold, penetrating gaze lies a labyrinth of thoughts that can never be read even by the sky that watches him every night. It's not just hunters. It is the shadow of every wound that never heals. A long time ago, the night was never this close. It has an area of. He has a family. But the night came, like thunder shaking the ground, invisible, but crushing from the inside. He heard the sound of the last breath of the one he protected the most. And the world collapsed. The body that used to rest on him at night, now only memories that clump like fog remain. He once believed that strength is protection. But as it turns out, being strong is never enough to prevent losing. Since that night, it's changed. No, more precisely, it broke. Now, his every move is no longer a hunt for survival, but demands something deeper than just blood. He's looking for a voice that screams in the night when destruction comes. He wants to know who, or what, is taking away everything he loves. The only clue was an unfamiliar claw mark across the ground, across the rock, leaving a mark that didn't match anyone he knew. Something or someone came in uninvited and disappeared. The only one who knew the answer was the old king on the east side, who had not moved from his territory in years. He is known as a border guard, wise but full of secrets. But approaching it is not an easy choice. The territory is off limits. Too many leave and never come back, but silence is no longer a friend. He should know. That night, he stepped towards the east, passing through desolate lands and grass writhing like snakes. Gusts of wind carry foreign odors such as sweat and anger. Someone's following him. He knows. But he's not looking. Those who follow him must either be brave enough to approach or stupid enough to die. Arriving at the slope overlooking the rocky hollow, his steps came to a standstill. There, a pair of yellow eyes stared at him from the darkness. Shut up. As if testing. As if judging whether he came with intent or with a grudge. I smell fear from a distance of 2 nights. The voice sounded hoarse, like sand crushed by the wind. I'm not afraid, he replied without blinking. You're lying. But it's good. The fearful survive longer. He stepped forward. You know who broke into my territory. Many have broken through. But not many leave a wound in the heart of a king. The lion growled, not because it was offended, but because the words were too appropriate. He took everything. His voice was now heavy, like a stone rolling from the top of a mountain, but not your heart. It's still burning. Silence hung between them. Finally, the old king nodded slowly. Then listen. There is one that was not mentioned in the season meeting. A traveler from an unknown place. Not following our laws. No respect for calm. He hunts not because of hunger, but because of wounds that make him forget who he is. The lion frowned. What do you mean? Not everyone who kills is an enemy. Sometimes what kills is a shadow of yourself. That speech shook something in him, something he had long buried. He hunted, not out of hunger, but out of anger. Never tore, not because of the threat, but because of the pain that he hid. Is it possible? The wanderer is a mirror of what he is trying to forget. There was no answer that night. Only the wind carries the smell of blood that has not dried up. He returned to his territory with a head full of questions, but also with a spirit that rekindled. It's no longer about who comes. It's about who he allows to rule, the king or the beast. And as dawn began to drive away the dark, a lion stood on a high rock, his eyes looking at the horizon with a new light. The past may have torn him apart, but he will no longer let it tear him apart. Now he hunts not for loss, because he remembers who he is, the wounded king, the risen king, the king of terror who will never let a single shadow rule the night again. His stride limped as he returned to the warming paddock, the remaining blood still drying on his fur, and a sense of fatigue hung heavy in every joint. The ground he stepped on felt different, as if it harbored a new silence that came not from fear, but from resignation. He's not looking for anyone. He's not chasing anything. That day, his steps were only for walking, no longer hunting, no longer running away. The sky was not as bright as usual, but the light was enough to form its shadow on the ground. And for the first time in a long time, the shadow didn't look like a monster. He only saw the silhouette of a creature that was exhausted, yet still standing, still breathing, still walking in an uncertain direction. In the distance, the sound of the wind began to return. The field that was once quiet now seemed to greet him with a soft whisper, as if blessing his decision to step without revenge, without the burden that pierced from the inside. The world looks different when it is no longer covered by the fog of anger, but as soon as his body approached the borders of the territory, he realized that not all could be forgotten so quickly. There were gazes that greeted him from a distance, those who once knew him as a guard, a leader, a snatcher, and a threat. They stood still, waiting, not with fear, but with doubt. The world has heard rumors about the death brought by him. The world also knows that every appearance brings change. It does not roar. Not threatening. He just stopped, looked at them, let time decide what would happen next. They didn't come any closer, and he didn't go any further. For the first time, there is a limit that is not violated. Not out of fear, but rather because both knew that some wounds could not be healed by force, and some presence was only meaningful when given room to be silent. The night was finally coming back, slowly enveloping the field with dark no longer gripping. The temperature decreased, the smell of earth again dominated the air, and small noises began to appear from the cracks in the bushes. He lay on a high place, looking at the sky full of stars, and in his chest that was still throbbing slowly, there were remnants of a taste that was difficult to explain. Memories come and go, not as violent as they used to be, but still piercing. He looked back at the shadow of his childhood, when he learned to tread on the ground for the first time, when the world felt so vast and angular. He looks at the figures who used to be with him, the laughter that now lives a faint echo. He can even feel the warmth of the body that used to always be by his side on cold nights. But now it's all in his mind. His body may be full of wounds, but his heart is learning not to shy away from pain. He knows that not all losses can be repaired, not all truths can be established, and not all enemies can be defeated without losing a part of oneself. But he also knows that true courage is not about tearing or destroying, but about accepting that even kings can be destroyed and choosing to stay alive. The night keeps rolling. It does not sleep. He watches not because of fear of a threat, but because in him there is something stronger than the killing instinct, the desire to understand what has changed in him. The world may still regard him as a predator, as a threat, as a symbol of unstoppable power. But behind the dense fur, behind the tense muscles, there is a soul that has felt loss, destruction, and liberation. Morning came again, and he no longer felt the need to assert his authority. It does not need to roar to indicate its presence. His steps were now slow, steady, and every step was like a silent conversation with the land he had long since abandoned. He realizes that the true power is not who controls the most territory, not who is able to defeat the most enemies, but who can resist when the world urges him to take revenge. Who can subdue his own anger when the blood still feels warm in the mouth? Who can see the enemy as a mirror of himself and prefer not to break it? From a distance, the sound of steps approaching. Not with attacking speed, but with almost pathetic indecision. A young creature approached, its eyes large and inquiring. He did not look, did not react. He just remained seated, looking at the horizon, letting the young man judge for himself who he was now, and the young one did not run away. No slouching. He just sat not far from the old king, looking at the same sky. In that silence, something new was formed, Maybe understanding. Maybe a confession. Perhaps just a silent agreement between two beings who know that violence is not the best legacy that can be given. That day, no blood was spilled. No tearing teeth, no death cries. Only silence slowly turned into peace. The king does not rule with nails and fangs anymore. It does not conquer with fear or anger. It's just there, intact in its wounds, upright in its loss, and calm in its decision to be more than a grabber.